The town of Hollow Creek had one unbreakable tradition. On Thanksgiving night, every household must set out an empty plate for the uninvited guest. And when Sarah Morrison forgot to set hers, something began following her home through the November darkness, its footsteps perfectly matching her own. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel of nightmares. Before we dive into tonight's absolutely terrifying story, I need to know, where are you watching from right now? Are you in a small town? A big city? Drop your location in the comments, because this story is going to make you think twice about every local tradition you've ever followed without question. If you're brave enough to make it to the end of this one, go ahead and annihilate that like button, smash subscribe, and ring that bell, because we bring you the most spine-chilling horror stories every single week. Fair warning, this one involves supernatural stalking, ancient curses, and a town tradition that should never, ever be broken. You might want to check your own dinner table after this one. Make sure all your plates are accounted for. Now settle in, turn down the lights if you dare, and whatever you do, don't stop listening until the very end, because the reveal in this story will absolutely destroy you. Let's get into this nightmare. Sarah Morrison had been living in Hollow Creek for exactly 3 weeks when she received her first warning. It came in the form of a hand-delivered letter, slipped under her apartment door sometime during the night. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive-looking, sealed with actual wax, deep red wax, that looked disturbingly like dried blood in the dim hallway light. Sarah picked it up on her way out to work, coffee in one hand, briefcase in the other. She was running late for her shift at the hospital. She was a nurse practitioner, recently transferred from Portland to this tiny Oregon town of barely 3,000 people. The move had been necessary after her divorce, a fresh start in a place where nobody knew about her failed marriage, or the messy court battles over assets she'd rather forget. She didn't open the letter until her lunch break. The paper inside was thick, textured, the kind used for formal invitations, but the message was handwritten in careful, old-fashioned script. Dear newcomer, welcome to Hollow Creek. We hope you will find our community welcoming and safe. However, there is one tradition you must observe for your own protection. On Thanksgiving evening, after your meal is complete, you must set one empty plate at your table. This plate is for the uninvited guest. You must set it before midnight and leave it until dawn. Do not touch the plate once it is set. Do not look at it directly after midnight. Do not, under any circumstances, forget. Those who forget are marked. Those who are marked are followed. Those who are followed are never seen again. This is not a joke. This is not a quaint local superstition. This is survival. Welcome to Hollow Creek. The Council of Elders. Sarah read the letter twice, then laughed out loud in the hospital break room. Her coworker, a young woman named Jenny, looked up from her sandwich. What's so funny? I just got the weirdest welcome letter. Sarah passed it over. Apparently, this town has some kind of creepy Thanksgiving tradition. Jenny's face went pale as she read. When she looked up, her expression was deadly serious. Sarah, you have to do this. I know it sounds insane, but you have to. Come on. It's obviously just the locals messing with newcomers. It's not. Jenny's voice was barely above a whisper. She glanced around the break room to make sure they were alone. My cousin lived here 5 years ago. She thought it was a joke too. She didn't set the plate, and they found her 3 days after Thanksgiving. Or what was left of her. She was in her own kitchen, sitting at her table. But Sarah, Jenny's hands were shaking. She'd been dead for at least 48 hours. And the coroner said she'd been eaten from the inside out, like something had hollowed her out and worn her skin like a suit. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine despite herself. That's ridiculous. That's not medically possible. I know what I saw at the funeral. Closed casket, And I know what my aunt told me, that my cousin's face looked like a mask that had been put on wrong. Eyes in the wrong place. Mouth stretched too wide. Jenny, just set the damn plate, Sarah. Please. It's one night. One stupid tradition. What does it hurt? Sarah wanted to argue. She wanted to dismiss it as small-town nonsense. The kind of superstitious garbage that kept communities insular and suspicious of outsiders. But something in Jenny's eyes stopped her. Fear. Real, genuine fear. Fine, Sarah said. I'll set the stupid plate. But she had no intention of actually doing it. The town of Hollow Creek transformed in the week leading up to Thanksgiving. Sarah noticed it gradually at first, then, all at once. The normally friendly neighbors became quieter, more watchful. People hurried through their errands instead of stopping to chat. The local diner, usually bustling with gossip and laughter, grew subdued. Conversations died when Sarah entered rooms. And everywhere she saw empty plates. They appeared in shop windows, carefully positioned among the Thanksgiving decorations. White plates, always white, set alone on displays of autumn leaves and miniature pumpkins. The hardware store had one in the window. The bookshop had one. Even the coffee shop had one positioned on a corner table that no one ever sat at. What's with all the plates? Sarah asked Jenny during a shift. Jenny didn't look up from the patient chart she was reviewing. Reminders. Of what? That some traditions exist for a reason. Sarah tried asking other people: the cashier at the grocery store, the mailman, the woman who ran the yoga studio Sarah had joined. They all gave variations of the same answer. It's tradition. We don't question it. You'll understand after your first Thanksgiving here. The only person who would talk about it openly was old Mr. Brennan, who ran the town's only bar. Sarah stopped in one evening after work, needing a drink and some answers. Mr. Brennan was in his 70s, grizzled and rough around the edges, with the kind of face that had seen too much and stopped being surprised by anything. He poured Sarah a whiskey without asking what she wanted. "You're the new nurse," he said. "The one asking questions about the uninvited guest. Everyone acts like it's this big secret. I just want to know what the hell is going on." Mr. Brennan took a long drink from his own glass. "You want the truth? Or the version that'll let you sleep at night?" "The truth. The truth is, nobody knows what it is. We just know it's been here longer than the town, longer than any of us. The indigenous people who lived here before us had stories about it, said there was something in the forest that fed on gratitude, on the warmth of family gatherings, on the one night a year when people came together to give thanks." That's insane. Maybe, but explain this. Every town within 50 miles of here has the same tradition. Empty plate on Thanksgiving. Has been that way since the 1800s at least. You know how many people have ignored it over the years? How many? 43 documented cases. All of them disappeared within 3 days of Thanksgiving. Some were found. Most weren't. The ones who were found. Mr. Brennan shook his head. Let's just say the autopsies were inconclusive because there wasn't enough left to autopsy. Sarah's medical training made her skeptical. There has to be a rational explanation. Animal attacks. A serial killer. Something. You tell yourself that, sweetheart. But when Thursday comes, you set that plate, and you don't look at it after midnight, and you sure as hell don't forget. Sarah finished her whiskey and left. But that night, lying in bed in her small apartment, she couldn't shake the conversation. She pulled out her laptop and started searching. Hollow Creek disappearances. The results were limited but chilling. News articles going back decades. Always around Thanksgiving. Always people who'd recently moved to town. The articles were brief, clinical, offering no real answers. Local woman missing. Search continues for newcomer. Body found. Cause of death undetermined. Sarah clicked on the most recent article, from 2 years ago. A man named David Torres, 34, had moved to Hollow Creek in October. He disappeared on November 26th. His body was found on November 28th in his apartment. The article included a quote from the police chief. "We've ruled out foul play, but the condition of the body raises questions we can't answer. We're consulting with specialists." There was a photo of David Torres. He looked normal, happy, alive. And there was a photo from the crime scene heavily redacted, but Sarah could see enough. A dining room table, a chair, and something sitting in the chair that might have been human once but wasn't anymore. Sarah slammed her laptop shut and tried to sleep. She dreamed of empty plates and things that watched from the darkness. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and gray, with a fog so thick Sarah could barely see across the parking lot from her apartment window. She'd taken the day off work, her first Thanksgiving alone since the divorce. Part of her had considered driving to Portland to visit friends, but the thought of explaining her failed marriage over turkey and forced smiles was too exhausting. She'd decided to stay in Hollow Creek, cook a small meal for herself, and treat it like any other day. The grocery store was nearly empty when she went shopping that morning. The few people she saw moved quickly, purposefully, not making eye contact. Everyone seemed to be buying the same things: turkey, potatoes, cranberries, and white plates. The store had a display of plain white dinner plates near the checkout, and Sarah watched person after person add one to their cart. She didn't buy one. She had plenty of plates. Back at her apartment, Sarah spent the afternoon cooking. It was meditative, calming. She made a small turkey breast, mashed potatoes, green beans, stuffing from a box. Nothing fancy. She even poured herself a glass of wine and put on music. For a few hours, she almost forgot about the weird tradition. Almost forgot about the warnings and the fear she'd seen in everyone's eyes. But as the afternoon faded into evening and the fog outside grew thicker, darker, Sarah felt something shift in the apartment. A heaviness in the air, a sense of being watched. She ate dinner at 6 o'clock, sitting alone at her small dining table. The food was good, but she had no appetite. She kept glancing at the window, at the fog pressing against the glass like something trying to get in. By 9 o'clock, she'd cleaned up the kitchen and settled on the couch with a book. By 10, she'd given up on reading and turned on the TV. By 11, she was pacing. The letter's instructions echoed in her mind. Set one empty plate at your table before midnight. It's ridiculous, Sarah muttered to herself. It's mass delusion, group hysteria. But at 11:45, she found herself standing in her kitchen, staring at her cabinet full of plates. Just do it, a voice in her head whispered. What does it hurt? Her hand reached for a plate, white, plain, exactly like all the others she'd seen around town. Then she stopped. No, she said aloud. I'm not giving in to this insanity. I'm a medical professional. I believe in science, not superstition. She closed the cabinet and walked away. At midnight exactly, every clock in her apartment chimed. Sarah was in her bedroom, trying to sleep, but the chimes seemed to go on longer than they should, echoing through the rooms like a warning. Then, silence. Deep, oppressive silence. Sarah lay very still, listening. Outside, the fog had grown so thick she couldn't see the streetlights anymore. Her apartment felt isolated, cut off from the world. And then she heard it. A footstep. In her living room. Sarah sat up, heart pounding. Hello. No answer. But another footstep. Slow. Deliberate. The sound of something walking across her hardwood floor. She grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight, then slowly opened her bedroom door. The living room was empty. But the dining table. There was an empty plate on the table. Sarah's blood turned to ice. She hadn't said it. She was certain she hadn't said it. Shed refused. Shed closed the cabinet and walked away. Yet there it sat. White. Plain. Empty. And, as Sarah stared at it, she saw something that made her stomach turn. The plate wasn't quite empty. There was a handprint on it. Not a fingerprint, a full handprint, pressed into the ceramic as if the plate were made of clay. The print was too large to be human. The fingers were too long, the palm too wide. And it was wet. Dark liquid dripped from the print onto her table. Sarah backed away, her phone's flashlight shaking. This isn't real. This isn't happening. The lights in her apartment flickered, and then went out completely. In the darkness, Sarah heard breathing, not her own. Something else. Something in the room with her. Who's there? Her voice came out as a whisper. The breathing grew closer. Wet. Ragged. Like lungs that didn't quite work right. Sarah ran. She bolted for her front door, fumbling with the locks. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the deadbolt. Behind her, she could hear it moving slow, dragging footsteps that seemed to come from everywhere at once. She got the door open and ran into the hallway. The building was dark, every light was out. The emergency exit signs weren't glowing. Even the streetlights outside had gone dark. Sarah ran for the stairs, taking them two at a time. She had to get out, had to get to her car, had to. A hand grabbed her ankle. She screamed and kicked, but the grip was impossibly strong. She looked down and saw nothing. There was nothing there, but she could feel it. Cold fingers wrapped around her ankle, pulling her backward. She grabbed the stair railing, holding on with everything she had. Let go. Let go. The grip released suddenly, and Sarah fell forward, catching herself on the stairs. She scrambled to her feet and kept running. She burst out of the building into the parking lot. The fog was so thick she could barely see her car, but she ran to it, yanked open the door, and threw herself inside. She locked the doors and sat there, gasping, crying, her whole body shaking. Something tapped on the window. Sarah screamed, but when she looked, there was nothing there. Just fog. Thick, swirling fog that moved against the wind, pressed against her car like something alive. She started the engine and threw the car into reverse. The tires squealed as she backed out of the parking space. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she had to get away. But as she drove through the empty streets of Hollow Creek, she realized something terrible. The fog was following her. No matter how fast she drove, no matter which turn she took, the fog stayed with her, thick behind her car, pressing close, moving with purpose. And in her rearview mirror, she could see something in the fog. A shape, tall, wrong, walking with long, loping strides that covered impossible distances. It was keeping pace with her car. Sarah drove faster, 40, 50, 60 miles an hour through residential streets. The speedometer climbed, but the shape in the fog never fell behind. She took a turn too fast and nearly crashed into a parked car. She corrected, gasping, and kept driving. And then she saw the roadblock. Police cars, lights flashing, officers standing in the street, waving her down. Sarah slammed on the brakes and skidded to a stop. She rolled down her window, words tumbling out. "There's something following me. In the fog. It's..." The officer held up a hand. He was old, maybe 60, with a weathered face and sad eyes. "You didn't set the plate. It wasn't a question." I don't. You're marked now," the officer said quietly. "We can't help you. We can only keep it contained to you. Keep it from spreading to others." "What are you talking about? What is it?" "The uninvited guest. The thing that's been here longer than any of us. You broke the tradition. Now it has to feed." Sarah stared at him in horror. "You're going to let it kill me. We don't have a choice. The officer stepped back. I'm sorry. I really am. But the tradition exists for a reason. If we let it take the whole town, everyone dies. This way, it's just me. Sarah whispered. Drive home, Miss Morrison. Face what's coming. It'll be quicker that way. The officer walked away. Sarah sat in her car, engine running, staring at the roadblock. She could try to crash through it, but where would she go? The thing was following her. It would always be following her. She looked in her rearview mirror. The shape in the fog was closer now, much closer. She could almost make out details. Long limbs, a head that bent at wrong angles, eyes that reflected the streetlights like an animal's. Sarah took a shaking breath and put the car in gear. She drove home. Sarah's apartment building loomed out of the fog like a tombstone. She parked in her spot and sat in the car for a long moment, trying to gather her courage. The shape in the fog had followed her the whole way. It stood now at the edge of the parking lot, barely visible, waiting. What does it want? Sarah thought desperately. What is it? But she knew. Deep down, she knew. It wanted what Shed denied it. A place at the table. Recognition. Acknowledgement. The uninvited guest. Sarah got out of the car slowly. Her legs felt weak, unsteady. The fog swirled around her ankles, cold and damp. She could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. The shape didn't move. It just watched. Sarah walked to her building and climbed the stairs. Every step felt like walking to her execution. The hallway was still dark. Her apartment door stood open. Shed left it that way when she fled. She stepped inside. The apartment was freezing. Her breath misted in front of her face. And the smell, God, the smell, like rotting meat and old copper and something else, something sweet and wrong that made her gag. The empty plate still sat on her dining table. But it wasn't empty anymore. Something sat on it, something dark and wet and pulsing. It took Sarah a moment to recognize what it was. A human heart, still beating. Sarah backed away, horror crawling up her throat. What do you want? The lights flickered on, and she saw it. The uninvited guest stood in her living room. It was tall, impossibly tall, bent nearly double to fit under her ceiling. Its limbs were too long, jointed in too many places. Its skin was pale, translucent, showing the dark shapes of organs underneath. But its face was the worst part. It had features, almost human features. Eyes, nose, mouth. But they were arranged wrong, shifted slightly, as if someone had tried to remember what a human face looked like and failed. The eyes were too far apart, the mouth stretched too wide. And when it smiled, it showed teeth that went back and back and back. You forgot me, it said. Its voice was like wind through a crypt. Multiple voices layered over each other, speaking in unison. I didn't know, Sarah whispered. I didn't understand. Ignorance is not innocence. The thing moved closer. Each step made a wet, sucking sound. The tradition exists because I allow it. One plate, one acknowledgement, one night of recognition for what I have given you. What have you given us? Everything. The thing's too wide mouth smiled. I am the reason your harvests succeed. The reason your winters are mild. The reason your children are born healthy. I feed on gratitude, on acknowledgement, on the simple act of being remembered. And in return, I protect this place. By killing people who forget to set a plate. By taking what is owed. One meal a year. One feast. When I am forgotten, when I am denied, I must take my due another way. The thing gestured to the heart on the plate. This is yours, Sarah Morrison. I have already begun the feast. Sarah looked down at her chest. She should have felt pain, should have felt the absence of her own heart, but she felt nothing, just cold, just numb. "I'm already dead," she whispered. "Not yet, but you will be, slowly, as I consume you from the inside out, as I wear your skin and use your form to remind others why the tradition must be maintained. They will find you at this table, just as they found David Torres, just as they found all the others. A warning, a reminder. Please." Sarah was crying now. "Please, I'll do anything. I'll set the plate. Too late." The moment passed. Midnight came and went, without acknowledgement. Now the debt must be paid in full. The thing reached out with one impossibly long arm. Its fingers were like spider legs, thin and jointed, and wrong. They touched Sarah's face almost gently. "Don't worry," it whispered, with its many voices. "I will make good use of you, your face, your voice, your memories. I will walk through this town wearing you like a coat. I will remind them all why they set the plate, why they remember me." Sarah tried to scream, but no sound came out. The thing's fingers were inside her now. She could feel them, burrowing through her skin, through her skull, into her brain, taking, consuming, learning everything she was so it could become her. The last thing Sarah Morrison saw was her own reflection in the window, her face changing, shifting, eyes moving apart, mouth stretching too wide. And then there was only darkness. On November 26th, 2 days after Thanksgiving, Sarah Morrison returned to work at the hospital. "Sarah." Jenny ran up to her, relief flooding her face. "Oh my God, I was so worried. You didn't answer your phone all weekend, and I thought I'm fine," Sarah said. Her voice sounded normal. Her smile looked normal. But Jenny noticed something odd about her eyes. They didn't quite line up with where they should be looking. Did you set the plate?" "Of course," Sarah said. "Just like you told me to. The tradition must be maintained." Jenny felt a chill but pushed it away. "Good. That's good. I'm glad you listened." Sarah, or the thing wearing Sarah's face, smiled that too wide smile and walked past her down the hospital corridor. Over the next few days, everyone in Hollow Creek saw Sarah. At the grocery store, at the coffee shop, walking through town in the evening fog. Always smiling, always watching, always reminding them. On December 1st, a new family moved to Hollow Creek, the Hendersons. A couple with 2 young children. They received a hand-delivered letter that night, slipped under their door. The envelope was cream-colored, sealed with red wax that looked like dried blood. "Dear newcomer, welcome to Hollow Creek." And in the fog outside their window, Sarah Morrison stood watching, waiting, making sure they understood. The tradition would continue. The uninvited guest would be remembered, and those who forgot would become reminders. Thanksgiving came again to Hollow Creek. The fog rolled in thicker than usual that year. Every household set their empty plate before midnight. Every household except one. The Hendersons' teenage daughter, Melissa, had friends visiting from out of town. They laughed about the tradition, called it stupid, superstitious nonsense. At 11:58 p.m., Melissa's mother begged her to set the plate. "It's just 2 minutes. Honey, please, just humor me." But Melissa and her friends were rebellious, defiant. They wanted to prove the old people wrong. They wanted to show that this was just a dumb, small-town myth. At midnight, they sat at the table, laughing, with no empty plate. The lights went out. In the darkness, they heard footsteps, slow, dragging, wet, and a voice, multiple voices layered together, whispered, "You forgot me." One of Melissa's friends screamed and tried to run, but the door wouldn't open. The windows wouldn't break. They were trapped. Sarah Morrison stood in the doorway, or the thing that wore her face. After a year, it was starting to deteriorate. The skin was loose, hanging wrong. The eyes were milky white. The mouth no longer closed properly, showing too many teeth. The tradition must be maintained, it said in Sarah's voice. But wrong, distorted. I am the reminder. And now you will learn why we remember. What happened in that house was never fully explained. When the police arrived the next morning after concerned neighbors called about screaming, they found Melissa Henderson and her 3 friends sitting at the dining table. Alive, technically, but their eyes were empty, their mouths hung open, and they sat perfectly still, not moving, not blinking, not responding to any stimulus. The doctors called it a shared psychotic break, mass hysteria. There was talk of moving them to a psychiatric facility in Portland, but then, on the 3rd day, they started speaking. All of them, at the same time, in the same voice. Set the plate, remember the guest, honor the tradition. Over and over, for hours, days, weeks. They never stopped. Eventually, they were moved to separate rooms in the psychiatric ward of the hospital where Sarah had once worked. But even separated, they spoke in unison, the same words, the same warning. And every Thanksgiving after that, the people of Hollow Creek set their empty plates, every single one, without exception, because they had learned the lesson that Sarah Morrison had learned too late. Some traditions exist for a reason. Some guests must never be forgotten, and some debts can only be paid in flesh and memory and terror. The uninvited guest was patient. It had been patient for centuries. It would wait another year, and another, and another, always watching from the fog, always hungry, always remembered. 3 years after Sarah Morrison's transformation, something new began to happen. The tradition started spreading. Towns, neighboring Hollow Creek towns that had never heard of the uninvited guest, began receiving letters, cream-colored envelopes, red wax seals, the same message: set one empty plate at your table. At first, these towns laughed. They threw away the letters. They refused to participate in what they saw as Hollow Creek's bizarre cult behavior. And then people started disappearing. Within 5 years, every town within 100 miles of Hollow Creek observed the tradition. Within 10 years, it had spread across Oregon. Within 20 years, it reached California, Washington, Idaho. Now, on Thanksgiving night, if you drive through the Pacific Northwest, you'll notice something strange. In every window, at every table, there's an empty white plate. Some traditions can't be stopped. Some guests can't be forgotten. And somewhere out there, walking through the November fog, Sarah Morrison still reminds people why they remember. Her face is barely recognizable now. A loose mask of rotting skin, eyes that don't quite track together, a mouth full of too many teeth. But she still walks, still watches, still serves the uninvited guest, forever. And if you live in one of those towns, if you've started receiving the letters, if you've seen the empty plates appearing in windows, then you already know what you have to do. Set the plate before midnight. And whatever you do, don't forget, because the uninvited guest is patient, but its hunger is eternal, and it's already looking for its next reminder. Thanks so much for making it through that absolutely horrifying journey with me. If you stuck around until the end, you're officially braver than most people. Drop a comment below and tell me, would you set the empty plate, or would you risk becoming a reminder like Sarah? Have you ever heard of any local traditions in your town that seem strange or unexplainable? Share them in the comments, because I want to hear all your creepy local legends. Don't forget to absolutely demolish that like button. Subscribe for more terrifying tales every single week. And I'll see you in the next nightmare. Until then, Maybe check your own local traditions. Maybe ask why they exist. Because sometimes, the old superstitions aren't superstitions at all. Sometimes, they're warnings. And sometimes, the warnings are written in blood and fog and empty plates. Sleep tight, everyone. And remember, some guests should never be forgotten.